Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Telnet Show. As always, I'm your host, Julia J.K. Allen. I'm an editor, coach, and writer who likes to sprinkle a little bit of magic into everything. We're very excited to welcome our guest tonight. Zane Carson Carruth is a multi-award winning international children's book author, a certified business etiquette and protocol professional, and sits on numerous nonprofit boards in Houston, including as the vice president of the Carruth Foundation. Thanks for, let's welcome them tonight. So tell us a little bit about your writing journey. What got you started in writing and what has it looked like for you so far?
Well, my writing just kind of happened by accident. I was at home one Sunday afternoon waiting on my daughter, and I just picked up a spiral notebook and started writing a story about a little fairy because, I've always been fascinated by fairies. And the fairy was kind of patterned after my daughter. And the more I wrote the story, the more it started looking like a tooth fairy. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a story about the tooth fairy. So I just ran with it. And the story really just wrote itself. I was just there with a pen and thoroughly in the moment and enjoying it.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I love kind of these retellings of like famous characters we all know, like the Tooth Fairy, and like kind of feel, getting the true story behind the Tooth Fairy and characters like that. That's so fun. So you said this is a children's book?
Yes. I only write children's books. I've written 7 so far, and they're geared for about 3-year-olds to 8-year-olds. Parents read to their kids the book, and then when little kids get older, they'll read them to their siblings. And it's kind of like an heirloom book. They're very high quality. The cover is, glossy, and the pages are big, and it's just something that you will have in your family and just pass down from children to children, child to child.
Yeah. So what made you choose children's book?
Like I said, it was just a fluke. I'd always thought I would write an adult book that I had in the back of my head, but this children's book just wrote itself, and it's just so easy for me, and it comes so natural that I just go with it. I'm not looking to do anything different. A friend of mine who's a writer, she goes, "Well, haven't you thought about writing a young adult, a YA book?" It's like, no, I just want to write about a Bella and the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. It's kind of nice when we find like our story worlds. It's very nice to settle in it and stay within this like magical world we've created. So
well, that's a good way to put it. My little story world. Yes.
Yeah, I don't blame you for sticking around. So I know this process is a little bit different because you're doing children's books, but how do you go from idea to then a finished manuscript?
There is a process, and I have learned through trial and error. What works the best for me is not to put too much pressure on myself to write the book. I have done so many rewrites, and then finally I just throw my hands up, get with the spiral notebook and a pen, and just start writing whatever comes to mind. And the story just writes itself. The best ones have always just written themselves, and it's effortless when I don't try too hard. But that's the key. I just can't try too hard. It's just easier just to let it go and let it happen.
Okay, yeah. Do you have any tips for letting go and letting it happen?
Yeah, just don't put any. Well, I kind of have an idea of what I want to write about. Like one of my most popular books is Bella Goes to the Rodeo, and I knew I wanted it to be about the rodeo, but I really didn't know what until I just threw my hands up and just started writing, and then it just kind of came naturally. So you just have to trust the process. You just have to trust the process, because you can always rewrite it. Nothing is, etched in stone. So, but that's what works best for me.
No, I would agree that they say like oftentimes good writing is rewriting, right? So it's like the first time we're just kind of telling, we're telling ourselves the story, and then we got to make it look like we knew what we were doing the whole time.
Well, and you have to work on the segues. That's the real hard part. I mean, you've got the ideas down in your little story, but you've got to segue into each one. So that's where the trick comes in, where you have to be really creative and put your expertise to work.
Yeah, no, I love that. Can you talk a little bit more on those segues and how you approach them?
Well, so like with, we'll just use the rodeo book. She starts out just
Sure.
going to a rodeo. Well, she's eventually got to get to the bull riding contest. That's where the story takes place. So you kind of have to, I like to have three different little stories or three different little episodes. So you just have to segue from one to the other where she meets all the little barnyard animals and makes a
Mm-hmm.
friend. And then they take her to the bull riding contest, and then you segue into that book is really about the bullfighter, the barrel man. So
Okay.
it's just, yeah, that's the trick. That's the tricky part.
It is. It is. Those like kind of moving seamlessly through scenes can be rather complicated to make it look
Yeah,
seamless.
you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
jump. You have to just kind of ease into it. You have to slide into it.
Right, right. No, I like that analogy a lot. Um, what do you think is the most important part of writing?
I think I think the character development is good, but I think the plot's the most important. You have to have
Hmm.
a good plot, and you have to know what you're trying to say, because you can't just
Yes.
write some story. You have to have, besides a beginning, a middle, and an end, you have to know what your story is. Is it about friendship? Is it about kindness?
Right.
Is it
What's the
about bravery?
theme?
What are you trying to weave in there? It just can't be all willy-nilly. There has to be some sort of form to it, and that's kind
Right.
of been a tricky part too, because you might start out one way, and then you go, well, I think we've got a little turn here, we'll have to work on this element. But that's what it's been
Hmm.
for me. That's what it's been like.
Yeah. So speaking, I know themes are especially important in children's books, right? And younger readers having those themes. How do you decide on your theme, or how do you like? Yes. How do you decide on your theme for the book?
Well, it it just comes to me gradually. Like, I always know what my next book's going to be when I finish the current one, and
Okay.
well, except for the haunted house, that took me totally by surprise, and that's a fun story, and I'll tell you that
Sure.
in a minute if you want. But I always kind of know what my next book is going to be, so I'm always thinking about it in the back of my mind, gathering little quotes or little excerpts or little anecdotes or something. But and then when I'm ready and I actually have the time where I can just be quiet and think about it, then I'll
Hmm.
start writing it. But it's usually just always percolating in my mind.
Yes, a lot of writing does not look like anything except for staring off into space. I feel like we're just
Yes. Yeah.
daydreaming for a while.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, but I would love to hear that story if you wanted to share.
Oh, that's fun. Okay. I didn't intend to write this book. It's called The Adventures of the Abella in the Haunted House. Well, see this house? See how beautiful this house is? This house is in
Uh
my
huh.
neighborhood. I wanted this house.
Oh.
It went up for sale. I wanted it so badly. And my husband was just like, no, no, it needs too much work. It's just not for us. Well, I disagreed, but I really wanted that house. But yeah, we didn't get it. But so I just couldn't let it go in my mind. So I thought, well, I'll just write a book about it. I'll just say, because what happened with the lady who bought this house, believe it or not, wants to tear down this gorgeous house and build something even bigger. This house is almost 9,000 square feet. She needed something bigger. So it just broke my heart that she was going to destroy this beautiful house. So I wrote a book that it didn't get destroyed, that it was haunted and the ghost saved it. And it's just,
Hmm.
all right here in my imagination, because the house, as far as I know, will still be torn down at some point, but they haven't started
Right.
that yet. But yeah, it's a cute story. I mean, it's a cute little ghost, and it's a cute story. Bella and Darcy do a good job fixing it up
Yeah.
and getting it ready to sell. But that's
Oh,
that's
that's
that was a fluke. I mean, that was a fun book to write, because I just wrote it so fast, because I already was passionate about the house, so it was
right.
easy to
Right.
put it into words.
Yeah. No, it's sad when we lose like kind of these landmarks that we love in our life, and so putting them in, like, you kind of memorialized it forever in your story, though.
Yes. And actually,
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a realtor. Actually, we did buy another house in our neighborhood, but she bought 10 or 15 of these books to give to her
Yeah.
clients because it is about, taking care on how to show houses and keeping them up. But yes,
Yeah.
I don't, now the people who own the house, they don't know I've written the book. So, not that I'm going to deliver it to them. I'll just let them find out on their own if they do, if they ever do.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, no, that's so funny. Um, this is one of my favorite questions to ask, even though everyone always talks about how hard it is to answer this question. But do you have
Okay.
a favorite author or authors, and what do you think they really excel at?
Well, to answer that question, I've had three books in my life that I thought were very, really interesting, and I have read them more than one time. One was by Donald Spotto, because I love biographies, and he
Hmm.
is a great author to write biographies because it's not just dry facts. He weaves
Mm-hmm.
a story into it and gives you references of time and date and months. And he's a
Okay.
great author, and I think he
Hmm.
excels at that. Another book that I just love was Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which couldn't be
Hmm.
more different from the Marilyn Monroe biography, but I think he did a great job. And
Hmm.
Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, which is probably my all-time favorite, but she's been fairly controversial, not as controversial as J.D. Salinger, but I
Hmm.
think she writes a great book, and I do enjoy her work. But that's the answer to that very hard question.
Yes, yes, no, we love asking that question because it's great to get book recommendations and stuff. But it's also great because it's like it reminds us all that like when we read as writers, there's so much you can learn from your authors that you love. Those like automatic buys that you have, of just being like, this is I love their descriptions or their writing style, and finding those little things you love in every book, and then you can kind of amalgamate it to your own writing as well.
Well, that's right. Yeah, because like in The Catch in the Rye, why I love that book, to me it was just humorous. I mean, that guy was such a
Yeah.
grouch, and he put all that on paper, and I loved it. I thought, I know that guy, that
Right.
adolescent
Yes.
kid that is such a grouch.
Yes.
But anyway, and then with the Fountainhead, there were so many characters in that it was hard to describe. But and plus the
Mhm.
research that they do, that is
Right.
phenomenal. That is
Right.
phenomenal. I did a lot of research on the rodeo book. Nothing
Mhm.
compared to obviously to any of these three books or any of the great writers, but you do have to do research, and you can appreciate the volume of research that it takes to get something right and to make it
Yeah.
a teachable moment, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, no, no. Research is very, very important. I was just talking about this in a writing Discord that I'm in because it's like if we want to believe the supernatural, the magic, the big things that we need the readers to believe, we have to get those everyday little details right.
Yes,
Because
it has to be
you can't
relatable.
yeah, you can't suspend disbelief for the big stuff if we can't even believe the mundane stuff that we're asking the readers to believe.
That's
Like there's nothing
absolutely
that'll
correct. Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing that'll pull you out of a story faster other than it's like, oh, this is unrealistic. They didn't do their research.
Yeah, that could have never happened.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at least nowadays we have so much available, like as far as like researching and sources online. Like it used to be, you'd have to like interview people or like visit a location just to get, that firsthand knowledge. But now it's great. You can go on like Google Earth and just like look around, look around
Oh,
the
it's
streets and see
phenomenal.
what
We
things
are
are.
blessed that
Yeah.
way. Yeah, because we
And we
literally
don't
have the
even
world
need
at
the
our
Dewey Decimal
fingertips.
System. Yeah, we don't even need the Dewey Decimal System to find the books anymore. It's just on our phones. I love it. So
Yes,
it
yes.
makes research a lot easier than I think it
Yeah,
used to
and
be
it's
for
fun, and you're
people.
surprised by it's like, I didn't know that. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Yeah, it's
No, it can be a rabbit hole for sure, though. Sometimes when I'm just like, oh, I need to write, but I got to look up this one thing. And then, like, 3 hours later, I'm like, I looked up all the things
a rabbit hole
and I
is
got no
exactly
writing
right.
done, but it was
Yes.
fascinating. Yeah. that can happen too. So, what is one thing that you have learned from the writing process?
The biggest takeaway is trust your instincts. I have republished and rewritten 2 or 3 books because I didn't trust my instincts. I went with someone else's opinion or ideas, or maybe you should say it like this, which I knew better,
Right.
but that is what has taken me the longest to get through my thick head. Trust my instincts.
Right,
And,
right.
I mean, even with my illustrations, the guy, I mean, they're great illustrations, but maybe that one is not exactly what I had in mind. But now I do go back and say, no, we need to change it. We need to do this, or I will stand my ground on certain things.
Good. Yes, yes.
But that has been a tough one for me. Is that been a tough one for you, or you're just good at trusting your instincts?
No, I think a lot of writers have imposter syndrome, right? We all feel like we're just faking it. Everyone else knows what they're doing. We're just kind of fumbling our way through.
Yes, because like, well, their idea must be better than mine.
Right, right. And I think that there's also like a tendency if, like, for example, when I was young, it was like we weren't allowed to have very many boundaries, right? We had to do what we were told as kids, and then they expect you when you turn 18 to magically know how to have a boundary, right?
Are you
of
from the
like,
South?
oh, I can say no, or I can, you know what I mean? Like these things can be very hard for us. I feel like, especially you know, different demographics in our population, it's like it's better to get along and be nice and kind than to like stand up for what we want is kind of the message that we can receive. And so I think it is very tricky and something that a lot of us have to learn as adults of like, how do we have a boundary? How do we say like, no, my idea is good. Like, I'm going to trust my instinct. Like, I feel like that's a very common struggle.
Well, you know, and now I like hearing that because you're absolutely right. And I think, I mean, I always contributed to be growing up as a female in the South. I mean, you were taught to be a people pleaser, and you know that really gets in the way.
Right, you have to be a peach, right? Or you know, you can't be stubborn, or you know, this and that. People see it as like a character flaw rather than like, no, you're just, you know what you want, and you're gonna get what you want.
Yeah,
That's not always a bad thing.
You know, you pay the price because you've got to literally pay financially to reprint these books and republish them. So you would think that, well, I've learned my lesson. I'm just going to say
it's a great lesson. I will say it does resonate with me because when I wrote my first book, the editor that I worked with was like, oh, this ending, I see what you were trying to do, but it's not as profound as you think, and you should really change it because he thought it would be like too predictable. But it was like the whole ending hinged on this. But I went with his ideas because he was the editor, right? I was like brand new, just graduated from college, you know, didn't know any better. And so when I went to query the book, the publisher that I ended up working with for a while was like, this ending just doesn't feel like it matches the rest of the story. Like, what's the story behind it? And I shared the original ending I had, and they were like, that's perfect. That's the ending you need. And I was like a little frustrated because I was just like, but my editor said it was awful and like horrible. And I was just like, I should have listened to myself.
So did you
like I had that same, I changed it back, yes, to the intended ending, and it ended up getting published that way. So I was very happy, but it was like, you know, the frustration of like going through the whole process of changing it and then querying it, and they were like, but this ending doesn't make sense.
Yes, but it made perfect sense to you, as the writer.
Well, yeah, the ending that I had changed it to because of the editor really didn't gel very well, too, because it's like also it wasn't my initial, like what I felt passionate about for the story.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that, like you were saying, it's a very common experience that we do kind of have to learn that, like, to trust ourselves, especially with our stories. But that's why I love being indie so much, because like you can have that complete control over the deciding process and like what are my deadlines? Like that's all up to me. Like I'm not on anyone's publishing schedule. You know, I can do what I need to do and make those creative decisions. Yeah, because like it is you're you pour your heart and soul into your story, and you want it to be the way you want it to be. So
well, because to you it's magical. You know how it's supposed to turn out. I mean, because the ending is already there when you wrote the first sentence most of the time.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. So, on top of the good advice you've already given us, if you could tell a new author one thing, what would you say?
Just that. Trust the process. Just let yourself write it without any pressure on you about how you want it to turn out, because you're
Mm.
probably a very, very good writer, and it's in there. It's a story that's in there, and it wants to write itself if you just let it. Just trust the
Yes.
process.
Yes, yes. I like that. Stephen King talks about in his book on writing with the door closed. And then when you edit, that's when you open the door. Meaning, don't
That's
worry
great.
about, yeah, don't worry about what other people are going to think of this while you're writing it. Don't worry about, what that's going to look like, how it's going to be perceived, whether it's going to be good enough. Just to get the story done, and then start to think about like how will it be received once you're starting with editing and kind of smoothing things out.
That's brilliant. Yes, I like that. That is very appropriate. Yes,
Yeah, I mean he's a very prolific writer, so I think he's got
it
some good
works.
advice. Yeah, I enjoyed reading his book because it's kind of a combination of a memoir and some like how tos. For skills for writers that you can use, so it's very interesting. The one thing I will say though is if you are not a pantser, there's not as much advice for writing for you in the book. But if you are a pantser, it's perfect. So like if you do a little plotting, that's not his style, so he doesn't have much to say about it. But like I said, it's a very fun book though because it's like kind of that mix between memoir, biography, autobiography, and then writing how to write. Yeah,
Really? So, what's the name of that book? I sounds like something I'd want to read.
yeah, it's called On Writing by Stephen King.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's very fun. Another great book that I've read, just on writing that talks about kind of the anxieties and stuff that kind of can limit our creativity is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. That's
Oh,
another great
okay.
yeah, that's another great writing book because she talks about the different tricks she uses to kind of get past those kind of creative blocks and just be creative. Yeah.
Okay. I wrote that down. Thank you. Yeah,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
always fascinated to read what how other writers deal with the process and what they're doing and
Yes.
how they do it and what works for them.
No, I'm fascinated with reinventing my writing process all the time because, like, what works for one book doesn't work for the next one sometimes. Like, sometimes you constantly have to try on new things, or you may think you know what works best for you, and then you try something and find it works so much better for you. Because, like, I was one of those fly by the seat of their pants people, and I could never think ahead. So I would just write and write and write, and then I'd get to about chapter 13, and I'd get stuck because I didn't know what happened next. Because I
Yeah.
didn't know what happened. You know what I mean? I wasn't figuring it out for myself. I was just kind of writing, and I'd fumble along and meander, and then I'd get to 13 and be like, well, I guess we're starting a new idea.
Yeah.
So I really had to sit back and say, well, like if I want to finish something, I need to look at my writing process and get very serious about it and try new things. And so I've kind of always been one to reinvent my writing process because I feel like that keeps it fresh for me and can keep it exciting. So
Well, and
we
you
love talking about writing process on the show. Yeah.
yes, and you feel like you fixed that issue, that problem.
Yes, no, I did. I did. I do a little bit of plotting to know what's going to happen next. So what I like to do is make a goal when I sit down to write and be like, okay, this is what my goal is for this writing session. So it could be developing the relationship between two characters or giving backstory or foreshadowing, whatever the plot device
Yeah.
is. But knowing what I want to do when I sit down, I don't just like stare at the screen like freaking out about what to write. So I find that really helpful just to have a focus and kind of know at least the next step, if not the end. I can still discover as I go along things, still do my pantsing in between. But like if I have that goal, that really focuses me.
Okay. So, what kind
Yeah.
of books do you write?
So I like to write everything that has magic in it. So, but
Okay.
it's a wide variety of genres. So I do a lot of fantasy, but I also write some horror. And I just happen to sprinkle some magic in there sometimes with that. So horror was one of those things that I got kind of challenged to try out. Somebody in my writing group had asked me like, what's one genre you feel like you could never write because I was feeling really blocked. And I was like, oh, horror. Like, I love a good scary movie or a scary story, but like, I could never be scary. I'm too much of a chicken to write anything like that. But he challenged me to write something because like the whole examining like what makes something scary was like such an interesting thought process for
Oh,
me. And so
yes.
I really had a lot of fun doing it. And so I kind of got into the genre on accident by being challenged. Like dared,
Well,
I dare you to do it.
how did the book do that you wrote? Did it turn
Yeah,
out
so
well?
I ended up being a collection of short stories that I wrote with my sister. So that was a really fun project. We had kind of the same prompts, and then we wrote our own versions of the story based on these prompts. So there's two options of each prompt in the book, so you can kind of see the connections, but how different they are.
Yeah.
That in the directions that we went with things.
Well, that
She's
sounds
funny because
fascinating.
she's very much like a everyone dies type of horror writer. So for her to do something with like a twist, somebody has to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, the book's got to keep going.
Right. The books you got to keep going. I love that. So it sounds like you have a lot on your plate, like reading over your bio and stuff. You're a very busy
Oh,
person. How do you make time for writing?
well, I try to just write one book a year, although last year I wrote two of them, but because I self-publish, and that takes a good 9 months once you finish with your book to get the
It does.
illustrations and to get everything perfected. But I just when it moves me, but you have to be in a place in your life where you can just be still. A lot of times I'll write on
Mm,
planes because I'm held captive. I'm not going anywhere, can't do anything. But
right.
uh, yeah, but then once like the book builds in your head, and then it gets to the point to where you just have to stop and start writing
Hmm.
to
Right.
stop the screaming in your head.
No, I can relate to that. Yeah. Kirsten talks about it a lot because she's mom of four. So
Oh
all
gosh.
those stolen moments, doing the laundry, folding the clothes, dishes, that's when she's plotting in her head on her book and figuring out her story. And then when she gets those stolen moments to type it all out, it just like comes pouring out because she's been holding up and storing
Yes.
those ideas all day. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you surprise yourself. Well, a lot of times
Yeah.
you'll surprise yourself because you go, I didn't realize I'd thought of that, or that is great. That is perfect for that part, or that's a great line or
Yeah.
sentence, paragraph.
Yeah.
That always makes me happy when that happens.
No, that is nice when you read something and you're like, that's a good sentence and I made it.
Yes.
It is very, very a great feeling, very validating. Yeah. Um, what would you say is your favorite part of writing?
Probably the end. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. The favorite part is when it starts to click. You get
Mm.
started and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have a vague idea what you're going to write about, and then you really get into it. And it's like, oh, this is going to be a good book, or this is cute. I like this, or I like where this is going.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part when everything starts to come together, and
Yeah.
you feel like there is a book here, and it fits. I mean, because I only write about the tooth fairy. My characters are Bella and her best friend Darcy. So, it has to
Mm-hmm.
fit their life, what they do, how they live their lives. And uh,
Mm-hmm.
so it can't be all over the place. But so that's what I like the best.
Yeah, no, kind of those dominoes falling into place is a very, very satisfying feeling when you're just like the story just clicks and makes sense. That's the best
Yes.
feeling ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about a least favorite part of writing?
I guess when you have that writer's block, or
Yeah.
when it's just this just isn't working, or I can't segue into this. How do I get them from here to here and have it make
Mm-hmm.
sense and be seamless? That's my least favorite part. That and the editing and all
Yeah.
that. Once you finish your story,
Yeah.
then the work really begins.
Right. Unfortunately, you're gonna read it 100 times and be sick of it.
Yes.
No, as an editor, editing is a common response we get, but I understand because I love editing other people's stories. Like you give me your story and I get to work on suggestions to make it even better. Like that I get to read a story and like think of ideas to make it better. Like the
Yes.
best thing
Yeah.
ever. But when it's your own story, you're just like, I used all my ideas. Like, what
I
do you
used all
expect me to
my
do
ideas.
now? Yeah.
I'm
And
done
like I
now.
said, you've read it a million times and you've gone over it and you're just sick of it and just want to throw it across the room. So I totally understand.
Yes, yeah,
People say editing
you
is not
fold
their
that.
favorite.
Well, I write my stuff on a spiral notebook. I mean, you fold that notebook
Yeah,
and you walk
yeah.
away and you just go, I'm done. I can't think of
Yeah.
one more thing to say, to write, to do.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any tips for dealing with writer's block then?
No,
When you
my
get stuck
only
in those
tip is
moments?
like what I said is just sit down wherever you write on the computer or if you handwrite like I do, and don't think about it. Just write, and you'd be shocked at what comes out. I mean, I was real surprised, and I have been.
Mm-hmm.
My most successful books are ones that I have done that. But yeah, you just
Yeah, just
have to
write and
not
see what
have any
happens.
pressure.
Yes, yes. I think it depends too on like what's causing that, right? Like if we're just really tired, we're burned out, we've been pushing through too much. Sometimes taking a break is the best thing you can do from your writing. Another great thing is like just consuming stories, like whether that's reading or watching TV or a movie or listening to music, just like refilling your creative well,
Yeah.
because I feel like we're all really great at like self care for like our physical health or our mental health, but we don't really refresh the creative stuff as much.
Right. Yes.
So I always recommend like if you're feeling really blocked, like you can kind of do something that's like fiddles with your hands, like doing the dishes or crocheting or something that kind of keeps
Yeah.
your hands busy, but your mind kind of wanders, or just sit down and consume some stories because you probably just need a little inspiration to get that
Yeah,
creativity going
that's
again.
a good that's good advice, because you do have to do something to get yourself out of it. You know, through some sort of
Right,
physical
right.
activity or um, right.
Yeah, no, going for a walk can be great too. Just get that blood flowing to your brain, your brain a little bit. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. All right. Okay. So, what would you say has been your most significant writing victory so far?
Probably a Bella goes to the rodeo, because Houston has the largest livestock show and rodeo in the world, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And from 2021 to 2023, my husband was chairman of the board and I was first lady of the rodeo, which, they did me a tremendous favor, and they really promoted my book. They
Oh,
sell it in their bookstores. We had book signings. It's been my most successful, thanks to them and the backing that they did for this
how
book. But
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, they still sell it, and it's 2025, and it's still in their bookstores and online in their merchandise shop. So
Oh, how very wonderful to get that support. Yes. So what are the duties for the first lady of the rodeo? I have to ask.
uh, it was so much fun. I miss it. Well, unfortunately, I had to go to a million events. There's
Right.
They were like probably at least one or two black tie events a week,
Oh,
probably
wow.
all
Okay.
year long. Cocktail
Yeah.
events. Oh, but then when the rodeo starts, it's 28 days. So I had to be there all 28 days. At the end
Mm-hmm.
of the first rodeo, truth, I ended up
Full month
in
of
the
February.
hospital with
Yeah.
double pneumonia. I mean, I was just
Oh no. Yeah.
wiped out, because you have to
Oh
be
yeah.
on and you have all these
Yeah.
guests in your suite, and there's a 4 o'clock party, a 5 o'clock party, and then you've got dinner.
Right.
You're not getting home till 10:30 or 11, and you're leaving at 3 o'clock. So it makes for a
Right.
long day. I lost weight. Nobody loses weight at the rodeo because all you do is eat and drink. But
Right. No, no, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, yeah, certain things like that are just like these social engagements that are so long and drawn out. That can be very hard because it's like you're running on fumes at that point, and there's still demands on your social battery and all that. So,
yes, yes, yeah. And well, the nice thing about the rodeo is they bring huge stars, like Gwen Stefani came, oh,
okay.
Luke Bryan,
Hmm.
Brad Paisley. They have huge stars. So that's the good part. You do get to meet them and chitty chat with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
But then you go right back into your suite and going on interviews. And
Hmm.
but but I miss it. I miss it during the rodeo. But the rest of the time, going to all those parties and functions,
Right.
that was hard. That was hard.
I imagine finding that many dresses would not be easy either.
Oh, I've got a wardrobe to beat the band. I mean, I
I imagine,
seriously
yeah.
have.
1 or 2 black tie events a week, yeah.
I mean, I have closets full of gowns and cocktail dresses, and yeah,
Yeah.
some will never see the light of day again. But
Right. Sorry, my dog is just wandering around. All right. So, next question is my favorite question and kind of how we end the show. But is there any writing advice that you hate?
Well, the only thing that annoys me is when people go, "Oh, it'll be fine. You're a great writer. It'll be fine," which I don't like when people do that. Because if you're really talking to them about an issue that you have, you obviously don't think you're going to be fine or that it's fine. But
Right. Yeah. So like it could be just right. That kind of advice can be very
like, you
frustrating.
do a good job. What are you worried about? Well, obviously I'm worried about something, and I'm not articulating it enough that you can't.
Right.
It's not coming through. But that's something that annoys me about writing.
I don't blame you. It's very dismissive to just be like, "Oh, it'll be fine. You'll figure it
That's
out." Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Right. No, it is not. It's not constructive if you're just saying, "Oh, you'll figure it out." Yeah.
Yes.
Not helpful.
Like I've never taken a writing class, and I've never read any of these books that you've talked about writing. I just do my own thing, so I'm probably missing out on a lot.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think you're missing out on anything. If you're successful at getting stories out that you love, I think you're doing it just fine.
Well, they're children's stories, so it's, that's a little bit different than writing something with 13, 14, 15 chapters.
Right. But I think it's still hard. It's just in a different way hard, right? Like
it's in a different way hard, yes, because
like it's similar to poetry. You don't have as many words to paint the picture. You've got to be better with your words.
Oh yeah, because my first book, oh my gosh, I could have written for Disney. I went on and on and on, and that's one I had to rewrite 2 or 3 times just to cut down on the words. I've learned it's got to be under 1,000 words. Under 900 is better. So you really do, a lot of stuff ends up on the chopping block because parents don't want to read a lot to their kids. They don't want all these words. And I'm like that with my grandkids. If they give me a book that's this thick, it's like, let's find something else.
Right, let me spare my vocal my vocal cords.
Yes. Yeah. They'll be asleep before you finished anyway, but if you're doing a children's book, that is my number one advice. It has to be short. It really, you have to do that word count over and over and over, and then go through and, remove any adjectives, anything you can find to get the word count down. So that's the challenge, keeping it short.
Streamlining it.
To keep your storyline there.
Yeah. So like I said, it's hard just in a different way. Yeah.
It's hard in a different way. Yeah, especially if you're wordy. And usually writers are wordy. They just like a lot of words.
I know. I'm guilty as charged. Although it's funny because I do tend to underwrite to where I will be, when I write, it's almost like screenplay writing where it's just like the dialogue and what's happening. And then I got to go in the editing and add all the layers to flesh it out. A lot of writers are kind of the opposite, where they write all this stuff and then have to cut to get it to a reasonable amount of words. But I always find that I write like the kind of the stripped down version and then add in the descriptions and the layers and what they're doing while they're talking.
Yeah, I would like your books the best. I don't want too much detail.
Sure. Yeah, it's all about a balance too. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I want to give you a chance to let our audience know where they can find out more about you and your books online. So here's the time to share your socials or your website or book.
Okay. Well, all of my books can be found at Amazon. If you just put in there Zane Carson Carruth books, all 7 of them come up. They're all in Spanish. So there's hard copies, paperback, and Spanish versions. You can get them online at Barnes & Noble's, Target, Walmart, and But anyway, I've written 7. The very first one, let me show you, is
Mm-hmm.
the world's first tooth fairy. See little Bella, how cute she is. She looks like
Yeah.
my daughter. And then
Oh,
I've done, she starts a tooth fairy school because everybody says, well, where do they get the money and what do they
right.
do with the teeth? And all of that is answered in the second book. This one is how the tradition started. You will never have to wonder how the tradition of the tooth fairy started. Right here.
All the
Brilliant.
answers right there. Yeah. We
And
love
then the
that.
tooth fairy school just tells you how they find the little kids with their teeth under the pillow. And then she
Mm-hmm.
gets a new hairdo, and and then we have racehorses. So this one is a fun one. A Bella and the Almost Racehorse. This was my racehorse, and he got a toothache, an abscessed tooth. And I
Oh
thought,
no,
there
yeah.
is a story in there. So, but she fixes it because, she's a tooth fairy. Who better to fix a
Yeah.
hurting tooth than the tooth fairy? So, anyway, I can go on and on and on, but I won't. I'll just stop with the haunted house. I already told you about that, which I don't own, but um, anyway. So, but you can, and I have my own personal website, Zane Carruth, .com. But one thing, I'm a certified etiquette professional, protocol professional.
Mm-hmm.
And my dream job would be, not my dream job, but I would love to have a syndicated column. So if you have a
Yeah.
magazine, a small magazine, and you're looking for etiquette articles about anything, and I love doing that, and I'm happy to do that. So you just contact me through my website, zanecarruth.com, and I'm your gal.
Yeah, we love that. Let's manifest that for you this year. Yeah, you get your own little
Yes,
column going. That'd be so fun.
yes. And the society needs it. Trust me, they need it.
It is a lost art, I feel like, for a lot of people.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a fun time talking with you tonight.
Well, thank you. I've learned so much from you. I appreciate that.
We love it. Like I said, this is kind of the highlight for our weeks of just like we get to speak with other adults about writing, and it's great. I get to speak to adults all the time, but Kirsha, with the 4 kids, she likes her adult time a
Yes,
little bit. That's very nice.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just being able to speak to other people passionate about writing, about the writing process is so fun. So we love it.
Well, I do feel energized. I mean, so
Yeah, we're
you
so
did
glad.
me so a world of good.
Yeah, we're so glad you were able to join us. And
Well,
thank you
thank
to
you.
everyone. Yeah, thank you to everyone listening along at home. Remember, there's more than one way up the mountain, and our next episode airs Friday as usual. If you're interested in being a guest on the Tell Not Show, you can find us on social media at the Tell Not Show or email us at thetellnotshow@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijinksrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to 4, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.